Let's begin by telling you that as the Nigerian Economic Summit Group Conference enters day 2, regional and global leaders, experts have continued to focus on addressing the country's economic challenges in order to revitalize the nation's economy. Today's session provides a platform for stakeholders to engage in critical discourse on issues such as economic competitiveness, inclusive growth, economic reforms, and sustainable development. News Central's Omolola Ololade tells us more.
The 30th Nigerian Economic Summit Group Conference has once again given Nigerians, particularly economic and financial experts, the opportunity to shine light on the country's economic challenges while preferring practical solutions to strengthen the nation's economy. The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, emphasized the critical role of economic reforms in transforming the country's economy, hence the implementation of the government's major reforms, including the removal of petrol subsidy, which has brought hardship on many Nigerians.
Clearly, government has had, as we have heard, to undertake necessary but relatively difficult reforms that have had an effect on the cost of living.
However, Nigeria Country Director, World Bank, Amaewhule, said that while fiscal and monetary reforms is important, it does not rely on government revenue alone, but also on expenditure. Amaewhule believes it is not all gloomy for Nigeria's economy, as it has been able to improve its GDP in the last 1 year.
The projection now is that revenue to GDP is projected to increase from 7.6% to 10.5%. That's more than 3 percentage point increase in 1 year. It's unheard of. Frankly, we've been working on these issues across the world in many countries. Often when you do reforms and have 1 percentage point, you're very happy. Because it takes time to really increase.
Mr. Wale Edun therefore mentioned that beyond these economic reforms, the government has made plans to boost its agricultural sector as a major driver to tremendously grow the Nigerian economy.
Apart from ensuring by diligently working in particular with the African Development Bank at this particular moment and other development partners to ensure that what remains of the wet season harvest with climate change, the wet season has sort of moved slightly, as well as the dry season harvest is successful, does produce bountiful food, which will reduce the cost of food and make it more available and affordable and bring down the rate of inflation. Because
while economic reforms may be fundamental to ensuring Nigeria's economic growth, the average citizen would argue that the impact of implementing such reforms should be bearable for them. This expectation is one that the summit may have to take into consideration. In Lagos for News Central, I am Omolola Ololade.
To politics, the Rivers State House of Assembly, led by Martin Amaewhule, has declared the seat of Edison Ehie, the Chief of Staff to Governor Siminalayi Fubara, and 3 other pro-Fubara lawmakers vacant following their absence from sittings for 152 days. Making this known during plenary, Speaker Martin pointed out that Ehie did not properly write to inform the House of the new office, and as such, his seat has been declared vacant. Regarding Victor Kojumbo and the 2 others, the House led 3 separate votes to declare their seats vacant for absenteeism from sitting for 152 days consecutively without notification or permission, in violation of the 1999 Constitution. The Umar Damagum-led faction of the People's Democratic Party say that it will deploy the services of security agencies to enforce the court order that validates Damagum as the national chairman of the party. The acting National Publicity Secretary of the party made this known to newsmen at a press conference at the PDP National Secretariat in Abuja. To further discuss this, I'm joined by political analyst Catch Ononuju. Hello, Catch. Thank you so much for joining us on the news. Hello, Catch. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
All right,
I hope you can hear me
now.
too.
Yes, I can hear you now. All right, Catch, speaking of this, what do you make of the Damagum-led NWC's decision to invite security agencies to intervene in the crisis? And, you know, does this move or will this move affect the party's internal dynamics in any way?
Well, I want to inform you that all that have now been overtaken by new events. Damagum was trying to lean on the arms of government to help protect him, citing legal positions of the rule of law that still makes him chairman until he's removed at the convention. But no, the governors have now had a meeting and the governors have now cancelled all suspensions. That means those who suspended Damagum has been asked to sheath their swords, and Damagum himself has also been asked to sheath his anger against the National Legal Advisor and the National Publicity Secretary. So that is one announcement to tell the world of where what the governors are doing on the ground. But I think I will say, let us give it 48 hours to see how the different protagonists react to this new move by the governors. Governors are now saying all the suspensions are hereby cancelled. Damagum's side back on the table, and the other people back on the table. So that's what the chairman of the PDP Governors Forum have said, and we will have to wait to see how that works out.
Okay, Catch. Now,
yes.
Speaking of protagonists and also the suspension, the Yayari Mohammed-led faction has actually defied a court order, you know, citing unconstitutional suspension of key officials. What political ramifications will this have for the party's leadership and governance structure?
Well, you know what? When you see people not respecting court pronouncements, it simply means that the party goes into anarchy, and that's actually where the party is heading to. Because you now have a strategy of different groups thinking, let's start this crisis and let those who support us now show their own raising of hands. And I tell you, these are not very, very good times for the party. No matter what it is that the governors think they're trying to do on the ground, these are not the best of times for the PDP.
Okay, but what does this say about, you know, the party's internal democracy?
Well, the party's internal democracy has long been undermined. What we are fighting right now is the party being lost to those who use money to force the party leadership into a compromise. And this has been going on for very long with the party. So I don't think what Mr. Wike is doing is new. No, we can learn this from Atiku, who had used money previously to undermine the leadership. And that was how the leadership kept quiet and then decided against zoning. And don't forget, it was the decision to go against the articles of inclusion premise on the device known as zoning that actually brought about this crisis, okay? In 2013, Atiku Abubakar told the world that respecting zoning is sacrosanct. And because of that, he has launched a caucus called NPDP. Used that to build a national coalition, which he now went on to remove the PDP from power and better the Buhari presidency. But after Buhari's 8 years, Atiku still wanted to run, and that was why he started those machinations, including paying money to marabouts and preachers in the mosque to start saying nobody should vote for people from the East. And that was why Wike, in afraid of that, started his acrobatics, heritage acrobatics, saying he's not Igbo, thinking that will get him elected. No, he didn't get elected. He still wasn't taken as vice presidential candidate. And then he started his anger. And finally, when Ayochayo stepped down due to some court issues, he now grabbed those people who were there. the party being challenged, not being in power. Of course, that means whoever is at the top leadership, if they see money, they will have to really, really be challenged. And that's what happened. So we can use money and got Damagun in his pocket. And that's why the party, feeling very frustrated, now want to go for the ball. And whatever it is, I think we still have to be very careful how we go about this, because fight doesn't bring anybody any good. But I know something must give. So the PDP right now is on the edge, and let's see how they play this. There are no two ways for this. It's either they sit down and they agree on how Damagun can exit, and then they continue from where Ayochayu, who is from the North Central, who stepped down, where we can find somebody to continue for him, not Damagun insisting he must stay there. And then if you want to talk to him, he starts doing all sorts of things. Damagun undermines the democracy, because what he has done is the reason why you're seeing the Amaewhule-led House of Assembly members giving instructions that the people who are with Governor Sim have had their seats lost. This is a consequence of the Damagun action. And this is the reason why you're seeing this kind of reactions against Damagun. For Damagun to go to court and say, no, PDP has no issues against the people in River State who had withdrawn from the PDP and declared their support for the APC. But because of they now saw the legal consequences of their action, Damagun now provided that soft spot. And because of doing that, they now see it as anti-party, because what he has done puts Governor Sim Fubara at risk, and this is the reason for this fight.
Oh. All right, well, that was, quite the explanation, but thank you so much, Kat, for taking time out to speak to us and also explain things, and put things in perspectives for us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And with that, we'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll find out how and why the national grid collapsed second time in 24 hours. We'll bring you more after the break. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Now, the national electricity grid collapsed again on Tuesday, plunging millions of people into darkness. The latest incident comes barely 24 hours after electricity distribution companies across the country announced the grid collapsed around 6:48 p.m., resulting in the loss of power supply across their networks. According to the discos, efforts are reportedly underway to restore power, but the recurring collapses have sparked frustration among citizens and businesses already struggling with inconsistent power supply. To discuss this, we're joined by Managing Director, Idfun Power Engineering Consultants Limited, Idowu Oyebanjo. Good evening, Idowu. Thank you for joining us on the news.
And regards to our viewers and listeners, yeah.
All right, so can you speak to us on the root causes of the second grid collapse within 24 hours? How was it different from the first incident?
Yeah, thank you. When there is a grid collapse, it means what we call blackout, and the system is down. It has to be restored gradually, and sometimes through a black start. But while you are doing the restoration, something else can go wrong. Another fault, a misalignment somewhere, and that will lead to another collapse. So that they call a partial collapse. Such an event. But in any case, we always have grid collapse in Nigeria. And we have discussed many times how to resolve the problem. First and foremost, a grid collapse occurs when there is a mismatch in demand and supply. So the amount of generation and the amount of demand. This can cause a frequency imbalance. The frequency can go over the set frequency of the system, which is 50 Hz, or under the frequency. Either way, it can lead to a cascade of failures. And once these things are to happen, then the entire grid will go down. But this shouldn't be happening again in this day and age in in our national grid based on available technology and technical systems that are already supposed to be in place in Nigeria.
Okay, now I agree with you on that, and you did talk about faults and misalignments, being the probable cause for the second collapse. But what kind of redundancies or backup systems does the national grid have to prevent or either mitigate grid collapses? Did these systems fail at any point?
Well, the system is not robust at all. It's weak. The system does not have the kind of redundancy a power system we have. And and that's very nice you mentioned redundancy. That's something that has to be worked upon. And that's investment. A lot of investment has to go into the power system for that to happen. So there is lack or minimal amount of redundancy is so far not enough to cause grid stability. The network is weak, as I said. The amount of generation we have compared to the demand or the population is so meager. That notwithstanding, there is no proper coordination of protection systems in that network. And the network for now is too large. It has to be decentralized. It has been, because the Electricity Act already allows the decentralization of the power network. And that's the only way we can survive, in my opinion. But for the grid collapse that we have now, there are technologies now being just recently available to power engineers that can really help the Nigerian power grid. And we have pushed this to those who are in charge of the power system in Nigeria. It's left for them to implement this. Like I've said earlier on, there are technologies now using sustainable electricity systems, renewable energy systems, that we have explained to them that this is how you will resolve grid collapse, and they will really work. They haven't been available before, but they are now available in the last 8 to 12 months.
Are they available in Nigeria?
We made a proposal to bring it into Nigeria, but we have not heard from the appropriate quarters. But nonetheless, they are available worldwide, and we can deploy them quickly to forestall this situation of grid collapse permanently. And that will be a legacy for whoever does that. Whoever resolves power issue in Nigeria is setting him or herself for a legacy.
All right, so you're saying that, the grid is actually weak at the moment and we need this technology. But who is to say that, if we end up, having these technology or this technology, that the grid will be reinforced to ensure reliability, in the system?
The first thing you do is to ensure that your investment or reinforcements, as you put them, are based on power system studies. Power systems, for example, in the UK, where I've been trained, is basically principally done by system studies. You don't just put things anywhere. But what we have in the reinforcement programs going on on that network is a series of putting things here and there, not minding where the load is. So you really need to do system studies. That's the first thing. And after that, you put this technology, put these devices I am recommending and proposing in the appropriate places. I have done the network study. I've looked at those places, the weak points, and what you have to do. So it's the implementation of this that is required. But more than that, you need to have an end-to-end view of the power sector. You have to start from the source of the fuel, then through the gas power plant, because we have predominantly gas, then through the networks, and then the consumers. You have to make sure that you obey the Electricity Act. You implement the Electricity Act fully, because that is the saving grace of Nigeria.
Okay. Now, just before we let you go, do you have an idea of when we should expect electricity or power to be restored?
Normally, restoration is always done within a day or two, and I'm surprised if not for the second collapse we had today, it will have been resolved by now. Hopefully tomorrow we should have power restored. But I must say, in any power system, for you to have a power system like that of the UK, the US, Canada, China, and the rest of the Western world, you've got to put meritocracy in place, you have to put pragmatism in place, and you have to do it the way they do it there. You cannot have a power system based on I know you or quota system or things like that. A power system will remain non-functional if you put all those things. Meritocracy is key. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Idowu, for speaking to us on this.
You're welcome.
Away from that, the International Committee of the Red Cross has raised the alarm over a significant surge in severe child malnutrition in Nigeria's flood-stricken northeast. Clinics in Nigeria, supported by the organization, have reported a 24% increase in the number of young children suffering from malnutrition this year. This follows the devastating floods in Maiduguri, the capital of Borno State, in September, which left at least 37 people dead and many others vulnerable to communicable diseases. More recently, the Kogi state government issued an urgent appeal for assistance after floods displaced over 200 communities in the state.
Ba komai yaro da jikin shi har tsawon shekara da wata tara na yaye shi. To daga nan da na yaye shi yaro sai yana rama sai ana cewa ko yayewa ne da aka cire shi a bakin nono yake ramewa. An gaya mana abin da yake damun yaro irin cutar raman nan shi ne yake damun yaro da kuma irin ciwo na yaran nan. Ikon Allah kuma da muka zo suna kokari akan mu maganganuwa allurai ikon Allah na kawo yaron nan baya iya zama cikin shi nan zaka ce ma babu ciki ne a jikin shi kwata-kwata lebu.
So we are at the stabilization center in Mubi, and I can already tell you that since the last time I was here, the number of patients has increased drastically. If you compare June, July, August, and even September of 2023 to the same months of 2024, you will see that there are about 2 or 3 times the number of children admitted in the stabilization center. When we're looking at the numbers, the drastically increased numbers that we see in the stabilization center, OTP, and everywhere in the country, it's not only linked to the conflict that has plagued Nigeria for the last few years, but it's also linked to climate change. It's linked to the flooding that we've seen in the last few months, some of the worst flooding that Nigeria has experienced in the last few years.
The United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization has initiated an emergency food distribution program targeting approximately 4,680 malnourished children in Jere local government area of Borno State. This initiative comes in response to severe flooding that has exacerbated food insecurity in the region. News Central's Umar Kirawa completes the report.
A recent report released by the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization indicates that 5 million people across Borno, Adamawa and Yobe states are at risk of acute food insecurity. Rukaya Usman, a lactating mother, narrates how she struggled to meander through the flood that devastated her community, leaving her with nothing, not even food.
Mun zo gida mun samu ruwa duk ya tafi da kayan mu muna ruwan zafi wajen babban rami din nan wanda ake kira saman bololo muna wajen yanzu haka ma muna nan amma muna karancin kaya da dama wanda ruwa ya tafi da shi.
In efforts to address the dire situation, the FAO is providing specially formulated nutritious food to address acute malnutrition, ensuring that vulnerable children receive the support they need to recover and thrive.
This will be a kind of our first batch of intervention for the flood-affected people, and this will be for the 1,000 household.
Alhamdulillah, askringena andera kare duriye sarina durindera karne iye sasain andera godengena krimiye fondena mukubure fondena kare bulimbe fondena.
Energy saving stoves were also provided to about 1,000 households affected by the flood disaster.
This is very much timely and is prompt response to the people of the area. And we also have fuel efficient stock alongside the charcoal that will be helped in using or utilizing to cook whatever that has been intervened by the Food and Agricultural Organization. So on behalf of Borno State government and the people of Jere local government, particularly for Shokari Ward, we are very grateful and we do appreciate and acknowledge the intervention.
As we are taking care of humans the same way we are taking care of animals also. So we have a plan of vaccinating about 4,000 animals within Jere LGA alone. And then also we have a plan for the macro gardening support, where we are going to give vegetable seedlings to some households with homestead gardening kits.
These efforts aim to alleviate immediate hunger and support sustainable living as families work to rebuild their lives after the disaster. In Jere for News Central, Umar Kirawa.
Stakeholders in Plateau State say all hands are on deck to mitigate, or all hands need to be put on deck to mitigate against climate change and disasters in communities for the benefit of future generations. Now, this was made known at an event organized by the National Emergency Management Agency in collaboration with the Center for Gospel Health and Development in Jos to mark this year's International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. Amaewhule was there for News Central and now reports.
Climate change, with its effects experienced by many people in many different ways in our world today, is a wake-up call on all and sundry to ensure we engage in activities that will reduce disasters in our communities. To mark the 2024 International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction, NEMA, in conjunction with SIGAD, began with a roadwork to sensitize the public on the need to have a safer society devoid of disasters.
We just felt it very important to gather these students and other of our stakeholders to also sensitize them and to even also advocate to them in respect to the climate change as we have globally, and also to see how we can have an interface with them, to also how to train them again on all these aspects.
You know, there's a concern that with the way we're going, we would need to prepare the communities, we need to prepare our societies to protect the future generation.
Floods, erosion, deforestation, global warming, and fire outbreaks, among others, are reasons for urgent action against these natural and man-made disasters. With stakeholders here seeing the need to contribute to disaster risk reduction, every other citizen is challenged to do more.
I'll clear the drainages and also educate my fellow individuals on how to address the issue of environmental disasters.
And I would like to educate some of my fellow mates about these disasters which are happening to us and how to prevent them.
The government should put on efforts and encourage we people that are doing this thing so that we have more strength to do more than this.
It has made us more aware of why we need disaster management in our lives, because we don't have to wait for disasters to happen before we know how to tackle them.
We'll definitely take the information back to the community and educate our people the more, giving them the awareness and add to what we've known in order to improve the management on disaster.
The theme for this year's celebration is empowering the next generation for a resilient future. Education remains key. In Jos for News Central, Amaewhule.
The Lagos Physical Planning Summit is a two-day summit planned by the Lagos State Physical Planning Permit Authority. Now, the summit, with the theme Rethinking Lagos, a new vision for a regional and integrated megacity, is designed to deepen engagement with relevant stakeholders in the building sector. News Central's Bettina Nweli was at the summit and now reports.
The Lagos Fiscal Planning Summit kicked off with various stakeholders, including urban planners, architects, and community leaders in attendance to discuss critical issues facing Lagos, such as housing shortages, transportation, and environmental sustainability. The keynote address was given by the former governor of Lagos State, Babatunde Fashola, who emphasized the importance of innovative planning, in tackling the city's rapid urbanization.
Payments for planning approval must not be seen and cannot be revenue. They are not sustainable. They are not sustainable as revenue. It's a one-off. But the service that government offers to those who are able to build must not leave a hole in the pocket of government. That's why I say it must be reasonable administrative cost to cover the provision of the service. The real revenue comes from prompt approval and then the construction of the asset itself. Because that is where your land use charge will begin to come from because of the value added to the land.
Panel discussions focused on integrating technology into urban planning, while networking sessions allowed participants to share insights on how to collaborate on future projects. Meanwhile, the Governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, highlighted ongoing projects aimed at improving infrastructure and enhancing the quality of life for residents.
On that trajectory as well, there's a plan for another Ikotun overpass. And you also can see, yes, Ikotun, we're coming there. Yes, yes. We know it's a major gridlock. And also the ongoing Okpebi-Odoyalaro overpass.
There is no doubt that meetings like this are necessary to harness thoughts and energies in the right direction. As such, the expectations from this summit will be the development of actionable strategies that will address the pressing needs of Lagos's growing population. In Lagos, for News Central, I'm Bettina Nwili.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Kenya's Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, has suffered a legal setback as the High Court in Nairobi rejected his bid to stop his impeachment process. On Tuesday, the court dismissed Gachagua's application to halt the Senate's impeachment proceedings scheduled for Wednesday and Thursday. In his ruling, Justice Chacha Mwita emphasized the need to uphold the principle of separation of powers, asserting that Parliament must be allowed to carry out its functions without judicial interference. He further remarked that courts should refrain from assuming the duties of other branches of government unless absolutely necessary. The judge also hinted that the matter could be assigned to a bench previously constituted by Chief Justice Kome, which is currently handling 6 other related petitions. South Africa has condemned Israel's onslaught on Lebanon as a violation of international law and cautioned that it risked plunging the Middle East into an all-out war. According to the International Relations Department statement, South Africa calls for an immediate end to the bombing campaign, stressing the urgent need for de-escalation. The statement stated that there is a higher risk that the region will descend into a major military conflagration, presenting a grave threat to international peace and security. Furthermore, Pretoria accused Israel of repeatedly breaching the blue line with its ground incursion into southern Lebanon, where 10,400 peacekeepers are deployed under Spanish command. Professor Emeritus at the University of Johannesburg, Farid Isaac, joins us now to unpack this. Hello, Professor Isaac. Thank you so much for joining us at this time.
Thanks for having me. Good evening to you and your listeners.
All right, Professor, how does South Africa's condemnation affect its diplomatic relations with Israel and Lebanon, as well as its standing in the broader Middle Eastern geopolitical landscape?
Well, certainly as far as Israel is concerned, it does impact on the relationship on the one hand, and on the other hand, there isn't actually much of a relationship to speak about at the moment. South Africa has withdrawn its ambassadors to Tel Aviv, its diplomatic staff from Tel Aviv, and has been very active and very vociferous in lamenting and condemning the Israeli crimes, or what South Africa has in fact taken the Israeli government to the International Court of Justice for what South Africa says are crimes against genocide. So there isn't much to speak about a relationship with Israel in the first instance. Secondly, as far as Lebanon is concerned, Lebanon, of course, would welcome the stance of South Africa. Internationally, as far as the allies, or the what is often known as the global north, largely European and more specifically North American countries, they wouldn't welcome South Africa's stand at all. South Africa, of course, along with Nigeria and Egypt, are major players on the continent. And so these aren't countries that one can kind of just push off or wipe off your table just like that. So South Africa remains a significant player in the world, but certainly I don't think that, realistically speaking, that South Africa will be able to play any role in the politics of the Middle East that are consequential. Firstly, the United States is far too tied up there with its own support of Israel. And secondly, I don't think Israel really cares a tuppence about what any country in the global south thinks about what it is busy doing and its actions.
Okay, but how do you think that South Africa's position, how would it influence the stance of other African nations regarding the conflict, between Israel and Palestine, and the broader Middle Eastern issues? Are you saying that if more African countries come together and stand with South Africa, that Israel will still not be worried?
Well, regrettably, the bottom line is that Israel will not be really concerned. Israel is hardly concerned about what the United States allows it to do. This on the one hand. On the other hand, in a recent United Nations General Assembly vote on a recognition of a Palestinian state and condemning Israeli actions in the Middle East, the whole of the continent voted actually along the same lines, with the exception of one country, that is Malawi. And regrettably, Malawi is also the only country during the years of the struggle against apartheid. Malawi was the only country that actually recognized the apartheid regime and had diplomatic relations with it. So it's not a question so much of whether South Africa can get the other African countries behind it. I think it is about South Africa and the rest of the continent.
All right, we seem to be having connection issues with Professor Ishaq. But thank you so much, Professor, for taking time to join us and also speak to us on this. Now we move away from that. The United Nations says it is troubled by the presidential election campaign in Tunisia, marred by a crackdown on the opposition. 3 years after making a sweeping power grab, Kais Saied was re-elected president of Tunisia with 90.69% of the votes cast, according to the ISIE Electoral Authority. A low turnout reflected widespread discontent in the country. Recalling that out of 17 prospective candidates, only 3 were accepted, while a number of presidential hopefuls were arrested and served lengthy prison sentences on various charges, UN Human Rights spokesperson Liz Thrussell says such cases are troubling and indicates a lack of respect for due process and fair trial.
In the weeks leading up to the election, which was held on the 6th of October, over 100 prospective candidates, members of their campaigns and other political figures were arrested on a variety of charges, ranging from falsification of electoral paperwork to charges related to national security. Out of 17 prospective candidates, the Independent High Authority for Elections only accepted 3. A number of presidential hopefuls have been arrested and received lengthy prison sentences on various charges. We strongly urge Tunisia to recommit to transitional justice in the interests of victims and to embark on much-needed rule of law reforms in line with international human rights law, including with regard to freedoms of expression, assembly and association. We also call for the release of all those arbitrarily detained.
On World Wrap, Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati said on Tuesday that security has been tightened at the country's only airport in Beirut to eliminate any pretext for an Israeli attack. He added that the heightened security measures have been in place for a week at the airport, which is located near Hezbollah's stronghold in South Beirut, an area that has experienced intense Israeli bombardment. At the end of September, Israel's military warned it will not allow Iran to transfer weapons to its ally Hezbollah via Beirut airport and stated that its warplanes were prepared to intervene if such transfers were detected.
في عندي ضمانة أو يكون في تحييد ما في شيء عندنا بين إيدينا، ولكن نحن كحكومة عم نقوم بكل ما أوتينا من قوة من شان نشيل الذرائع من يد الإسرائيلي. تفتيش لكل ما يحدث في المطار، من أول شيء من اسم كل ركب يدخل لكل بضاعة بتفوت، إن كانت بضاعة بالشحن أو كانت بضاعة مع كل شخص، إن كانت الطائرات والهبوط لها عم بيصير تدقيق قوي كتير لحتى ما نترك ولا ذريعة.
Canada has expelled 6 Indian diplomats, including the High Commissioner, linking them to the murder of a Sikh separatist leader and alleging a broader effort to target Indian dissidents in Canada. Earlier, India retaliated by ordering the expulsion of 6 high-ranking Canadian diplomats, including the acting High Commissioner, and stated that it had withdrawn its envoy, contradicting Canada's statement of expulsion. Relations between the two Commonwealth nations have significantly deteriorated as a result of the diplomatic dispute. Ties have been strained since Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau claimed last year to have proof that Indian spies were involved in the assassination of Sikh leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar on Canadian soil.
It is obvious that the government of India made a fundamental error in thinking that they could engage in supporting criminal activity against Canadians here on Canadian soil, whether it be murders or extortion or other violent acts. It is absolutely unacceptable. This weekend, Canadian officials took an extraordinary step. They met with Indian officials to share RCMP evidence which concluded 6 agents of the government of India are persons of interest in criminal activities. And despite repeated requests to the government of India, it has decided not to cooperate.
And that's all at this hour. But before we go, here's another look at some of our top stories. We told you that Amaewhule-led Rivers Assembly has declared pro-Fubara lawmakers' seats vacant. We also told you that blackout has persisted as national grid collapsed second time in 24 hours. Finally, you heard that court has dismissed Kenya's deputy president's request to halt impeachment. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Dashen. Usman.